Our whole life is shaped by decisions, but there's 3 decisions you're making every moment you're alive. And the way you make these 3 decisions shapes your destiny. When I was a little kid, I grew up in a pretty tough environment. I had 4 different fathers, and we had never had money even for food. I mean, Thanksgiving with no food, and my parents are fighting. It was the worst experience of my life. It was the most crushing experience I felt. I have a younger brother and younger sister. I'm the oldest. So I was trying to keep them from hearing this conversation. And then a miracle happened. Bang on the door. I'm the oldest, they're screaming, so I go answer the door. And I answer the door, and standing there is this giant man. I was this little boy, and he's holding this huge box of food. And beside him on the ground was a black pot with an uncooked turkey in it. And he said, "Is your father home?" And I said, "Just one moment." I was like, this is a gift from God. This is gonna change it all. This is gonna make my mom and dad happy. It's gonna be unbelievable. So I go, and my father is screaming at my mother through a closed door, to the bedroom door. He goes, "You answer the door." I said, "I did. He's gotta see you." He goes, I kind of teased her. I said, "Dad, you gotta come." So he said, "Fine." He made one last yell at her, and he walks to the door, and I'm waiting there, just can't waiting to see his face. And my dad opens the door, and this man's standing there with this big box of food, and my father did not get happy. He looked at this man, and he raised his voice to him, and he said, "Look, we don't take charity." And then he took the door to slam it in the man's face, but the man was a good-sized man. He put his foot there and smacked his foot and bounced back home. He said, Sir, this is not charity. Everybody has tough times. Somebody knows you're having a tough time, and they want you to have a magical Thanksgiving. I'm just the delivery guy." He said, "Please take this." And my father said, "We don't take charity." He went to slam it again, and this time the guy put his shoulder against it so he couldn't do it. And then the guy said something that I'll never forget, and in moments I wished he hadn't said, but he found a way to force my father. He's holding this thing, and he looked at me, and then he looked at my dad, and he said, "Don't make your family suffer because of your ego." Now my dad's level of energy increased, but he was also trapped. So he took the food, slammed it on our table, and slammed the door in the man's face, and never even thanked him. And then I thought, years I figured out, our whole life is shaped by decisions. That's what we've talked about today, right? But there's 3 decisions you're making every moment you're alive. And the way you make these 3 decisions shapes your destiny. First decision we're all making every moment is, what are you gonna focus on? I realized that my father's life and my life ended up very different because we made that day 3 decisions very differently. He decided to focus on the fact that he has not fed his family. If somebody is really stressed out, they're not stressed out for no reason. It's because they're focusing on something that makes them feel stressed. They often, when they're focusing on it, it changes the body. You start to feel tight, you start to feel a certain way. And then they use language like, "I don't know what to do, why am I so overwhelmed?" So if we change what we focus on, if we change the way we use our body, if we change our language patterns, we'll instantly feel different. Think of how do people use their body when they're worried versus when they're excited. If you learn to use your body first, use your focus first, you can literally change how you feel in moments, and then you develop new habits where you start to feel good all the time, and it isn't some phony fake pump up. It's literally the way you've conditioned your body. Just like being fit as an athlete, you want to be emotionally fit. And the second question you got to decide, every moment you're alive, and including this moment, what are you going to focus on? Second question is, as you're focusing on, what does this mean? What does it mean? And the bottom line on meaning is, if you think about it, you get to make up the meaning, and most people pick the worst one, don't they? That day, my father decided to focus on the fact he hadn't fed his family, and I know what meaning he gave because he said it out loud over and over again, that he was worthless because he had not taken care of his family. The meaning creates your life. If you think, God is punishing you, that's why this is happening, which some people do, or God is challenging me, or is this a gift from God, or has it got nothing to do with God, I'm just a lazy bitch. So the meanings we select change us instantly. And then the final, most important decision you make every moment you're alive. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And I'll tell you what he decided to do. He decided to leave our family shortly thereafter. 3 years ago, he passed away. He died alone. Nobody wanted to be part of it. And my life turned out very different than him. I was the only one to go to his funeral. No one else in the family would go. And I can tell you, right before his death, he got the lesson because he looked at me and he said, "Son," he said, "I was a bastard. I didn't connect with anybody, and look what I'm dying of." But what changed my life was the meaning I gave it. I decided that day that what this means is that strangers care. And if strangers care about me and my family, I decided what I was gonna do is I was gonna care about strangers. And that completely changed my life. I promised myself someday I'd be well enough to do this for other families like was done for me. I realized in that moment that the worst day of my life, my father leaving, had actually been the best day of my life. Because if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be here today. And now because of that, I'm get to live this life. And I have the desire and the drive and a want to give it this way.